Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive straight into the true biological function of dopamine. Look, we hear about this chemical constantly, right? It's all over articles, everyday conversations, and pop psychology. But today, we're cutting through the noise. We're looking strictly at the data to uncover what actually fuels our drive and motivation on a biological level. So if you want to understand why you do what you do, you're definitely in the right place. Let's start with a big question. What really drives our ambition? I want you to question your assumptions for a second about the chemical processes controlling your everyday motivation. Is it just the satisfaction of finally hitting a goal? Or is there an invisible engine working behind the scenes, way before you even take action? Let's dive in and see what the research actually tells us. Section 1, the pleasure myth. Misunderstanding our brain's chemistry. Here's the thing. Dopamine is frequently misidentified as a simple pleasure signal. Pop culture has basically trained us to believe that when we eat a rich slice of chocolate cake, or finally beat that incredibly tough video game boss, dopamine is the chemical reward that washes over us and makes us feel good. But the data is crystal clear on this. That is a fundamental misidentification of its actual biological function. The core misconception really boils down to this. We think dopamine equals pleasure, but the reality, it's all about anticipation. Dopamine doesn't spike when you enjoy the result. It actually spikes when you are craving the result before it even happens. Think about waiting for a pizza delivery when you're absolutely starving. That peak, jittery excitement right before the doorbell rings, that is dopamine at work. It is honestly a massive paradigm shift in how we understand our own minds. Which brings us to Section 2, the anticipation engine, the true biological driver of motivation. Think of dopamine as this sort of internal high five. It's not just some passive chemical floating around in there. It is an active mechanism. It creates this powerful craving. Essentially, it's your brain giving itself a high five, not because the job is done, but to motivate you to get up off the couch and actually get the job done in the first place. And this brings us to a crucial and honestly fascinating concept, reward prediction error, or RPE. This is an internal feedback mechanism that triggers when an outcome suddenly surpasses your expectations. Imagine reaching into an old winter coat you haven't worn in months, right? And you pull out a crisp $20 bill. Your brain didn't predict that reward at all. So when it happens, reality totally beats expectations. That error in prediction kicks off an internal feedback loop that forces your brain to pay immediate attention. Chemically, this creates a really distinct double spike pattern. First, you get an anticipation spike. That's your drive to act, happening before the reward even materializes. Then, if the outcome actually surpasses what you expected, boom, you get a second spike. That's the reward prediction error in action. You get one spike to get you moving and a second spike to say, wow, okay, that was way better than we thought. So chronologically, this whole dopamine process unfolds in a precise, repeating sequence. It starts with that initial craving, which directly drives you to take action. You do the work. Then, if that action leads to a better than expected reward, your brain delivers that powerful RP feedback. And this invisible chemical sequence, it is happening inside your head constantly, dictating your behavior step by step. Moving right along to Section 3, the habit loop, strengthening behavior and driving ambition. So how does your brain use these chemical spikes to actually shape your life? Well, it builds a loop. You anticipate a reward, you experience that reward prediction error when things go surprisingly well, and that feedback literally rewires your brain to repeat those specific actions. It's this incredibly efficient behavioral reinforcement machine, seamlessly turning isolated actions into our daily routines. Ultimately, dopamine effectively strengthens the habit loop by signaling the craving for a result. Rather than just the enjoyment of the result itself, this anticipation-based chemical process becomes the absolute biological foundation for how we build every single habit in our lives. Whether you're trying to build a great habit, like hitting the gym, or trying to break a bad one, this specific circuit is the underlying architecture. The impact of these spikes is profound. They completely hyper-focus your attention on whatever caused that surprisingly good outcome. They reinforce your behavior so you're basically compelled to do it again. And when you zoom out, they scale up from a tiny microscopic reaction to drive human ambition itself. The very engine that pushes us to strive, to build, and to achieve. It's rooted right here in this biological circuit. So, I'll leave you with this. How is your internal motivation engine driving your habits today? Now that you know dopamine is this active anticipation engine rather than just a passive pleasure signal, you can actually start observing your own cravings in real time. Pay attention to how these invisible anticipation spikes are actively shaping your ambition and your daily routines long after this explainer ends. Thanks for joining me to unpack the fascinating science of motivation.